This is Figures Sold Separately, episode 194, Driving Around with George Washington, February 19th, 2018.
I'll blow this town to smithereens! Time-bound! Try to get up there in time, Spider-Man!
Watch me cut my web, Goblin!
Watch yourself fall, Silk Slinger!
Gotta stop the bombs in time!
If I don't get you, webhead, my diagnoses will!
Holy Hannah!
And you're running out of fluid!
Is this more action than even Spider-Man could handle?
Spider-Man, a video game from Parker Brothers, the ones to beat.
I am super excited about my brain break. Is that good, Matt? Matt said I had to be very clear that this was a brain break introduction, cold open. So I'm really excited about it. I feel like I really wove that in very seamlessly. So here's my brain break.
The inside joke.
As many of you know, I am not a big gamer, but I do love app games. And so what I've been playing is this fun little game called Tap Tap Fish, and it is exactly what it sounds like. You build this coral. And
okay.
I
I thought maybe it was what was that fish game from a while back that was really big?
I don't know.
Where you, or no, it was bird. It was a bird, wasn't it? Where you fly the bird through the
Flappy Bird.
Oh,
Flappy
Flappy Bird.
But there
I
were,
sucked at
But
Flappy
there were
Bird.
fish versions of it. I think that's
Flappy Bird was the one that,
really?
like, the guy was making $1 million a day and then just decided to close it down because he just didn't like the attention.
That's super
I think
weird.
it was because the Vietnamese government was like, hey, we're not making any scratch off of this.
He was making $1 million a day. It was nuts.
That is crazy pants. So anyway, it's this really fun game called Tap Tap Fish, and it's basically just a Skinner box, and you grow coral, and then you put fish in it, and
You constantly tap the screen.
you literally just tap the screen, and it gives you more
It
points.
happens all day
It's
long.
Do you
really
play it on
satisfying.
a phone or do you play
Yeah.
it on a tablet?
You can play it on a tablet, but I don't have a tablet, so I play it on a phone.
You so it's just all you
It's just
hear
tapping
is
the screen.
You literally, you tap the screen, and then you like upgrade stuff
All day, all night.
Yeah.
Just tap, tap,
and
tap,
I figured
tap,
out how to
tap.
like
Oh.
see. I can do it like really fast.
With two fingers.
Now where is I assume it was a free app.
It is.
So where's the microtransaction? Because there is one.
Oh
somewhere.
yeah, you can like pay to upgrade anything more rapidly, and in order to upgrade things more rapidly, you can also watch little ads for like other games.
Of course.
And
Because that's how games are now. We
I
can't.
know.
I would much rather. It's one of the reasons I don't game on the iPhone or Android because I've got both. It's the one reason I don't game anymore. It's because like just let me spend $2 on a game. I don't care. I'll spend $5 on a game if it's cool enough. But like I don't want to sit there and constantly fall behind because. You know, like even Uno. Like I love Uno.
Yeah.
I love Uno so much that I bought Uno on my phone.
Did you really?
So that I could play it, and you can play against other people like all over the world.
That's pretty
And-
cool.
No, but then they trashed that version, and you can't use it anymore because they went to a freemium version, so that like you have to like you can only play so much, and if you want to play more, then you have to like give them you have to like pay them and buy new game. It's just
That's
they added
lame.
these weird elements to it. Yeah.
That's super lame. One of the interesting things that I've actually really liked about this game is the way that they do currency. And you guys will have to help me out. You can tell me if this is like maybe this is a common tool in gaming. I've never come across it before, but that's not saying a lot. So as you progress through the game, obviously things get more expensive. But
Of course.
since you're on a little tiny phone screen, it can be difficult to be like, oh, now stuff is like $100 million bajillion dollars. So what they do is their currency is based on the alphabet, and 1,000 A's equal 1 B, and then 1,000 B's equal 1 C, and then so on and so forth. And so I'm now to the like I just got my first 1.5 O's, and I was really excited because it let me buy a new fish, but.
It's all about the O's.
It is about the O's. It's so true. But I was wondering, is that like a common game thing? Because I've never come across a currency system that was based on the alphabet, but it's brilliant.
I haven't heard that before, but I think it's just a new take on the same thing, which is basically hiding the fact that you're paying real money for things. I think it's probably just a play on that, maybe. You know, like remember how the Xbox 360, I don't know if the Xbox still does that. I don't think they do, but the Xbox used to do like, you had to buy like, what was it, points or something? Like you wanted to buy a game, it was like, this
is like Xbox points.
Yeah, 50,000 points.
Microsoft points.
Yeah, and it was like, well, how much is that in freaking dollars? It's like, you can buy 10,000 points for this amount of money. And I'm like, just tell me how much the goddamn game is.
See, but you don't I haven't spent any money on this.
Okay.
It just, as it grows, then you just get like a new level of currency.
Well, you
achieving
have,
a level.
but you've just been doing it in the form of watching an ad.
All right. That's fair because time is money, and
Yeah, yeah. But that's the new thing. That's the new hotness.
I mean, I get it. It makes sense. I
Yeah.
watched a lot of those 15-second videos.
Well, I mean, now they're starting to introduce it into like mainstream gaming a lot more. I mean, who was it EA got all that blowback for the new Star Wars game?
Yes, so much.
Yeah, because real. Well, I don't want to say real gamers because that's kind of condescending. Mainstream gamers, not casual gamers, got they don't want that shit.
Yeah, they would rather
like, look, I'm going to pay $60. Let me. Yeah. It's already bad enough. I got to pay $10 a month for Xbox Live or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think part of their issue there is that you can't release a game that's a free-to-play model and still charge $60 for it.
Right.
Like it's kind of like League of Legends, or if you had like DC Online, like they have these games that are totally free to play because they're supported by microtransactions.
Yeah.
Like you can't sell a $60 game and then be like, but to play it, you still need to like buy everything all a la carte. Like that's
like I've probably spent around $400 on Grand Theft Auto, and that's above and beyond the $60 I actually paid for the game. But I don't have to do that. But I don't play the game as much as a lot of these kids who stay at home for the summer and do nothing but play the game.
Well, but it's also
so that's the way I catch back up.
It's also optional content.
Yeah,
it's not like you need this stuff or you're going to not be able to play.
Exactly.
And there's always there's a difference in there when you're in a game like Battlefront where they make it functionally impossible to play unless you do that. I mean, technically you can grind, but it's like
that's kind of
grinding.
Playing the game so much that you eventually can get to that point,
and not even playing, and not like playing in a way that's fun, but just like doing tedious tasks just to mine money out of. Well, I don't know. You tap.
That sounds like exactly the kind of thing I would love.
So, yeah. Back in the day, you would have been very, very good at World of Warcraft mining.
Oh man, I totally would have.
And then World of Warcraft. Now I've never played it, but you could sell shit that you've accumulated.
Well, yeah,
right?
but there were people that used to pay real money, and there were people that did for like as their source of income. They would be hired from people to like, while I'm at work, you're going to go on my account and just grind for gold.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And they would pay real money for people to go.
It's literally the basis for Bitcoin.
That's true.
Although it's not anything you have to do. You just have to build the rig.
Yeah, we were hanging out with some friends the other night, and he was like, "Oh, my servers just crashed. They're mining Bitcoin for me." And I was like, "I don't know what that means."
They crashed?
Yeah, they crashed, and he had to go like restart them or something.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wait, you're mining in your basement right now?
Yeah.
I didn't know that that's how Bitcoin
Yeah, it's like the elevator pitch on Bitcoin is that for any currency, you have to create scarcity for it to have value.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the day, it was seashells. Well, seashells are not common in the middle of Africa, so they used it as currency. And it's the same thing with Bitcoins. And the scarcity is that you have to do these very complex
equations
right? In order to build the encrypted Bitcoin, and that creates the scarcity.
That's so interesting.
Funny fact, I did not know this until about 4 days ago. The Bitcoin mining industry has caused a shortage in GPUs or graphical processing units. So, your computer has a CPU, but in order for you to do, display your graphics card has a GPU on it, and GPUs are much faster at doing like floating point computations, which is what Bitcoin uses. Okay. So what they do is they daisy chain all these GPUs together in boxes to actually do the calculations. And so people have just been buying up all of the graphics cards they can find. So that real gamers, when they're like, "Oh, I'm building this really sick gaming rig," they can't find a fucking graphics card.
They can, but it's incredibly expensive.
Yeah, people have been selling it for like 7, 8, 9 times their value.
Whoa.
Yeah. Bubble? Much?
Yeah.
It's already started to collapse.
I would like to go back in time and like just skip the whole like explaining how I went back in time thing and just pick like 3 jobs that are so outside of the realm of their day-to-day activities and try to explain them. Like the World of Warcraft thing that where you go and grind for fake gold while your other thing, like I want to do that. I think that would be awesome.
Do you ever like drive around and you daydream a little bit while you're driving?
Never.
One of the fun things that I like, or one of the weird places my brain will sometimes go is like, what if I could have a historical figure in the car beside me? You know, like I could just pluck them out of their own time and put them inside. Whether it be 1985 me or whether it be George Washington. Like, what if you could pluck George Washington out of 1790 and put him in the car beside me and be like, "This is what you created."
He would kill you immediately.
So angry
with his wooden teeth. He just bite me.
he would kill you. I mean, he's a trained soldier.
Okay. Yeah.
So he would be incredibly disoriented and assume you were a threat. And
but there's got to be some sort of lead up. Like,
yeah, like this is putting aside the ho magically did you get me here?
Yeah. What?
I mean, like if you could go back to his time and go, "Look, dude, I'm going to take you 200
so you're going to Bill and Ted
30 years into the future, and I want to show you what you've built here becomes."
So you're going to Bill and Ted him.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well,
like the yes, it's bigger on the inside, blah, blah,
it's just
blah.
a thought experiment.
Why don't, since we're being recorded right now, so why don't you engage with your like future self right now and
it doesn't work
see
that
if
way.
you can see if you can find out some things.
But it doesn't.
Find out what the next Bitcoin is so that we can.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, like if you plucked someone out of the 30s and brought them ahead to now, they wouldn't be quite as freaked out as someone from the 1790s would be.
Yeah.
Because the 1790s, he has no concept of anything he sees around him other than like trees. Like, okay, I recognize trees. I don't know what cars are. I don't know what paved roads are. I don't know what these buildings are.
He's old fashioned. He's not an idiot.
No, I understand, but
I like how people in the past were just like stupid.
No, but like. Think of
like okay,
but he has think about it. He has no frame of reference.
Okay, fine, but if you were shot 200 years into the future, you would have no frame of reference. But you wouldn't be suddenly stupid.
No, I would.
You would see like means of conveyance, and you would go, "Oh, so we don't have cars anymore. We have this means of conveyance." You wouldn't be like, "What is that thing moving across the sky?"
No, but I have a much different frame. Okay, think about the 1790s. The train didn't exist. Cars didn't exist. Like
the horse didn't even exist.
The horses weren't there. But like, I mean, you know, if you think of like, if you plucked someone out of the Middle Ages and brought them to the 1790s, they would be like, "Oh yeah, sure, cool. Yeah, okay, yeah." They would totally get it. "Oh, you have guns? Okay, I totally get that." But like if you brought somebody from the 1790s and they were sitting in a car with you and listening to the music coming out of just nothing and like they don't understand any of it. I mean, yeah, he's not going to like freak out and like run and like, you know, start killing people like you think he is.
With his wooden teeth.
But I mean, he would be.
Matt said.
No, I said that part.
Oh, that's right. You did say that.
Okay, but I guess I disagree because yes, they wouldn't intuitively understand where the music was coming from in the car, but you could explain it.
How would you?
He wouldn't be. You're like he couldn't possibly understand, and you're like
no.
Like,
no, I don't think you quite get. I don't think you quite get the prerequisites to get to explaining to someone how my cell phone is streaming music from 1995 in my car. Like, you don't just have to explain what a cell phone is. You have to explain electricity. You have to go all the way back and explain what a recording is. Like, he's never heard a recording. The only time he's ever heard music is when he goes to the symphony and it's played for him right there. So you have to explain how recording works, what it is. He has no frame of reference for anything. And it's just 230 years ago. That's how far we've come. It's a thought experiment, Ken. Ken is looking at me like this blank look on his face.
I understand it's a thought experiment. I just don't think old-fashioned people were completely clueless about what electricity was.
I could explain it to... Yeah, but the only electricity that he knows of is like static electricity and like lightning. So how do you explain taking from his frame of reference of what electricity is as being lightning and saying, like, okay, well, we harness that and we generate it. See, they didn't even know how to generate electricity back then.
Yeah, see, the words you're using, they couldn't even understand. Like, okay.
Yeah, you magically make this thing that then turns on these magical lights. I mean,
it is magic. That's how I would do it.
But when you take, but then the cool thing about the thought experiment is you go, okay, well, wait, well, what if I took somebody from the 50s, from World War II, and brought them back today?
Let me engage with you on this though, because your thing is like, so it's like magic. It's like magical lights. Okay, you could go 1,000 years into the future.
Mm-hmm.
And things would be just as wondrous to you as what you're describing right now.
I disagree.
But you wouldn't assume it was magic. You wouldn't assume it was sorcery. You would assume it's technology beyond your current grasp.
But they would not necessarily do that in the 1790s.
Exactly, because in the 1700s, guess what else they had?
Well,
they bled you because they thought that your humors were out of balance.
So you're talking about pre- and post-industrial revolution, basically.
I mean, even before that, like they didn't even have. I mean, the steam engine did not exist, did it? I don't think if it did, it probably wasn't common knowledge if it did exist.
Not in 1790, it didn't.
There was no technology whatsoever.
But they understood the concept of a machine.
Yeah, but that's a big leap.
I mean, what I'm saying is because he is intelligent, he's not going to his head's not going to explode. Like I will eventually be able to bring him up to speed. But I would have to start at such a basic level because he has no foundational knowledge of anything that is in this apartment right now.
Kind of depends on who. I think Benjamin Franklin would be down with it.
Benjamin Franklin would be
15 minutes.
Tell me everything.
Benjamin Franklin would be like, awesome. Where can I get some pussy?
Y'all still got that. Huh? Y'all still got pussy, right?
Women don't wear dresses anymore. They just wear nothing. I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, he would love it. But I mean,
I can get to France in how long?
I mean, yeah, it's a 9-hour flight, bro. What? 9 hours? Oh, and then airplanes. You want to talk about blowing Ben Franklin's mind? Show him an airplane?
Oh my God, that would be so
Except
cool.
people have had the concept of that for hundreds and hundreds
but
of
having
years.
the concept of it and then actually going to do it is something totally different.
In the 1790s, they did not understand an airfoil.
It would be impressive, but not confusing. Just like if we went to the future and people had their own personal flying saucers, we would say, "Oh, that's cool. You guys finally figured that out."
No, I don't think it would be confusing.
Like, "What is that thing?" We would be like, "Oh, you guys have that now." Because Leonardo was coming up with airplanes.
No, I'm not saying it would be confusing. I'm saying it would be wondrous.
Oh, yeah.
Like to be able to show.
But you're talking about would not be able to understand. There's a big difference between on
his teeth.
I think there's a big difference between that. That's really impressive and it's wondrous to me, and I can't comprehend that.
I think that there's a lot of things that he would not be able to comprehend that we use every day. There's no way he would even comprehend what a cell phone is.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Like it does what? Oh well, it can let you talk to people a long distance away. It can also let you see them a long distance away. But then it can also.
Do you think there's? But by definition, that means whatever 1,000 years from now we would engage with would be such an unnatural extension of what we have now.
No, I don't.
That they've got to have that it would be kind of the same kind of. It would be the same kind of principle.
No, I don't think it would be. And the reason I say that is because even though let's say 1890, that's 100 years removed from George Washington in 1890. If I brought somebody from 1890 here, it would be way less jarring for them. And it's just like if you brought someone from 1890 to 1990, it's not as jarring, because by 1890, by 1900, science was a thing. Technology was a thing. It's post-industrial revolution.
But somebody from 1790 to 1890 would be blown away.
I don't think they would be as blown away, but they would definitely be. There was a lot of wonderment there, and that because that 100 years we developed. I mean, by 1890 we had electricity. We had trains.
Telephones? Do we have telephones?
Again, you're talking about the industrial. You're talking about the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
So that was a period of rapid expansion, which happened during the Renaissance, which happened during
not as much.
It really did.
We were no.
The problem
remember
is,
that the Renaissance is rediscovering things that we already knew.
But historically, we see things as compressed. I had a friend that was referring to like Spartacus as a medieval thing the other day, and I was like, Spartacus is not medieval. You're off by about 3,000 years. But
no, not that far. Spartacus would have been
about 1,000 years
BC.
Before, yeah.
So the Middle Ages would have been been like 2,000 years.
So it would have been like 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, but anyway.
God, stop compressing things, Ken.
But again, like there's a lot of assumption there. I think that like it's all from perspective. Like when we look at it's always made me wonder how anachronistic like historical movies would be to somebody living in that era. Like for somebody who lived in the Middle Ages to see a movie about the Middle Ages and realize like, oh, okay, so you guys took like 150 years of time and just assumed it all happened at one time.
No, you're right.
Like those people are like there's 10 people and they're dressed from like it would be like somebody 1,000 years from now making a movie set in our time period, but we're all sitting around this table and one of us is dressed like the 1960s and one of us is dressed like the 90s and one of us is dressed like, and it's kind of like.
Well, except that first of all, we do live in Asheville, so that actually is a pretty reasonable scenario that we could find ourselves in.
But you get what I'm saying. Like,
I do get what you're saying.
To us, we see that nuance. But when we think of like the 1800s, we think like there's 18 like.
But there wasn't that much nuance.
But you see that in like steampunk all the time. It's like people take 5 decades worth of fashion and compress them down into like one style.
Okay, but. I understand what you're saying, and I think that the reasoning for that is that, like I said, if you took someone from Jesus's time and brought them to 1776, they would not really be blown away. They'd be like, oh, you guys wear different stuff, and oh, look, you have like these such and such, like you have machined metal or whatever. I mean, there'd be some little things, but I mean, heat is still coming from fire and light is still coming from fire and you've got books instead of scrolls. Like there would be certain things, but like you could easily go, oh, well, instead of rolling up our written material now, we put them in these binded, folded pieces of paper. But like, see, oh, okay, I get that.
But see, there's things that...
And that was 2,000 years.
I understand, but there are other things that happened socially in that period of time that make a very big difference. For example... To somebody from Jesus's time, the idea that 80% of the population could read and write would be like us going to the future and finding out that 99% of people know Kung Fu. It would be like, that is a very specialized thing that you all somehow know how to do now.
Well...
Because in Jesus's time, you had like 0.5% of the population could read.
But I think that was more because of... Man, we're getting into the weeds here.
I think that
was more because of... I think that was more because of people didn't need to know how to read. They would like to have known how to read, but they had to... They were more... It was more important for them to stay alive.
I think it was largely because there was a deficit in reading material. In Jesus' time, the only way you could get a book, and the fact that, yes, books look different and they're not scrolls now is incidental to the fact that in Jesus' time, somebody had to copy that scroll, and it was very expensive. And then the printing press came along, and suddenly, when somebody wrote a book, there were 800,000... Like, before the internet, the printing press was like... Mm-hmm. That's the reason people learned how to read, because, like, they could go... Like, it's like the Protestant Reformation, because, like, suddenly people could read the Bible for themselves. They didn't just have
Yeah.
to like trust what that guy on the pulpit was telling them it said. They could actually read it.
But I think that jobs were much more specialized back then. So you had people, what were they called? The people that could read and write?
Scribes.
Scribes. So you'd have scribes that could read and write. Sure. Merchants didn't know how to read and write, but they knew how to do math. But scribes didn't know how to do math. So
Right.
it was like they
had, like, abacuses and stuff.
now we actually put all that stuff together. But going back to what you were saying about, someone from today going 1,000 years into the future, I wouldn't be quite as blown away because I have the scientific knowledge and foundation and frame of reference to understand what is possible now. Someone from 1790, they have no concept that it would even be possible to create a computer. What would I do with it? Like they have, like what? Why? Why would you do this? Why do you care about being able to quickly travel 60 miles? Why do I care about that? I'm going to do that like 4 times in my life. Why do you have to be in such a rush to go 60 miles in 45 minutes? Yeah, that's going to take me a week, but who cares? It's just a concept that it's a different, I guess it's a different world.
I can see what you're saying. I think we have the understanding of what exponential growth and change can look like, which is a fairly modern concept.
Yeah.
And I also think, maybe instead of like everybody having kung fu knowledge, I think I could see like everybody being able to speak like upwards of 20 and 30 languages. That would be
Something
the
like
norm.
or
And I would be
languages.
Like, how do you even function at that speed?
What I see happening is that languages just sort of meld together into kind of like in Firefly, where they kind of meld into like this Chinese English, this
Sure.
Chinglish, I guess it would be, or something like that. But like,
That's officially what it's called, Chinglish. That's crazy.
Instantly, it sounds racist.
It does.
does.
Like immediately.
but like,
I think bringing somebody from a historical period into this time period would. I think some of the most shocking things would be like social evolution. I think the fact
sure.
that
blow them away with homosexuality. Like they will have no idea what that is
I doubt
unless
that's true.
they are. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I don't.
I don't think people even talked about it back then. Like
I think they
in
did.
the 1790s, they would be like,
Yes.
"Oh, you know
I'm
that
pretty sure
Jebediah
Yes,
and
they
George really like each
definitely
other."
did.
Okay.
I think so.
That
How accepted it is.
homosexuality has always been around. I mean, if you consider,
No, I know it has. It's in other. It's in. They see it in dolphins too. I mean,
well, but like, but we've been through periods of time in the past. Like we act like we have just discovered like tolerance of homosexuality. That has come and gone.
True.
I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was gay as A Year Long Christmas, and he had a lover and was open about it. And it wasn't until 100 years later that that everybody started trying to pretend he was straight, because being gay became taboo after that. And before the Renaissance, during the Dark Ages, it was taboo because of the church.
Right.
And before that, it was fine because the Greeks were doing it.
Well, it's
and
like-
the Greeks were like, you don't have a boy lover? You need to get a boy lover. That's the only way he's going to grow up to be a decent man.
yeah. Well, also there
Like, it was a
was.
social responsibility for you to go have anal sex with that child.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
And this has been
title.
episode 195.
Show title.
That's history. That is
also getting it off of this topic. The same thing was true for women's rights. During the time of Christ, women. The patriarchy wasn't as big as it is now. It wasn't, women were seen more as equals in Rome and in Greece. And it was much later on that we kind of, during the, there are people that know biblical history better than me, but like during the Council of Nicaea, everybody, I think it was the first one, everybody got together and was like, all right, a bunch of men got together.
Exactly.
And we're like,
A bunch of
hey,
white men got
let's
together.
figure out what the Bible's going to be. Let's
I don't think they
collect
were
all
white.
this
It was
stuff.
Nicaea.
All right, that's fair.
They were mulatto. They were
Oh
mocha.
my God, this is not getting better.
But like they all got together and were like, you know what? Women are getting kind of uppity. Let's take a bunch of these
Oh
books
my
out
God.
of it. I didn't do it. They did it. I'm saying they were wrong. But you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I think what would be fascinating would be somebody seeing that we don't have a race-based class system, and first of all, not understanding that we don't have slaves anymore, but not having a race-based caste system.
From what time frame, though? Because if somebody from 1790, I can definitely see understanding that we don't have slavery anymore.
But
it was already seen as a
but we don't have a race-based caste system because it was so not because we are so far removed from the concept of that not being natural. Whereas
Are we, though?
it was so yes, we are. I honestly
from slavery, yes. From racial equality not being a thing.
Like
no.
even in the Americas, there was a lot of mental gymnastics that went on to justify slavery, whereas and there were abolitionists. There were abolitionists going back to like the 1700s. There were people who were like, this is unjust. But if you go back far enough, like slavery was like the right of the superior person. And I say all this tongue in cheek, but like there was an assumption. It was the inverse of now, where we assume people are inherently equal to one another. The reason that the irony of like we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal is the fact that it was assumed we knew they weren't talking about those people, because those people are not like it was. Yeah, it's people can point at that and say, well, that clearly means that like really like that the framers were against slavery. No, not at all, not in the slightest. All men are created equal did not include servant castes.
Property owning men is what they meant.
Well, right, and that's not even an irony from a historical
and black
perspective.
People could not own property. So.
I think it would be a stark shock to not only see, you know, black men and white women and white men and black women marrying and being equal. I think the idea that we live in a society with an assumption of social equality would be like, why?
From what time frame, though?
To some degree, any time before the 20th century. And I say that because that was done either by slavery or feudalism or some manner of
conquering cities and
like the Romans had slaves from they just conquered people, and it's like, okay, we won the war, so you're all our slaves now. And it was such a social understanding that the slaves went, okay. But we see all these things through the lens that, like we mentioned Spartacus earlier. Spartacus we see now as the story of like this slave that saw the injustice of being a slave and was like, I don't want to be a slave anymore, and I'm going to free the slaves. And we see that because that's like our modern lens. The irony is, historically, Spartacus was like out to kill a bunch of Romans. He didn't give, like, historically speaking, Spartacus was not out to free slaves. He didn't see any problem, even as a slave, with the slave system because it was just so entrenched in their culture. He just didn't want to be a slave.
Yeah. By the way, this has been episode 1 of 3 white progressives talk about slavery. I just want everybody to know we understand.
It's just so entrenched.
Our privilege. We understand our privilege.
We just assume that slavery is the kind of thing that, like, deep down everybody has always known was wrong, and especially slaves always knew it was wrong. But
yeah, it's one of those things where it's not awful until it happens to you. So if you're on the shit end of the stick,
right,
you know how terrible it is. But if you are on the other end of the stick,
well, but wow. also, but if you're in that,
Dirty.
but if you're in a culture it's that entrenched, like even your slaves are just kind of like, well, this is our life,
yeah,
you know, and it's just kind of.
I agree that I think the social bewilderment would be much larger and deeper than the.
But it would be like, oh, we got rid of slavery, but from that perspective, it would be like, okay, I understand why.
Well, but I think like
how do you get your things done?
Okay, but going back to Matt's original thought experiment, driving around in the car with George Washington, the equal rights of women and the lack of slaves would not be what he would notice most, like, immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would depend on the person too, even from 1790.
Yeah, it would.
If you bring Thomas Jefferson along with you, he is going to. Once he gets past the amazing technology he's looking at, he is going to look at the social structure of everything and be like, "Wow, this is amazing."
So
Washington,
so you can have kids with a black woman now and nobody cares?
Jeez. But you know what I mean? Like, he's going to look at the social issues.
Yeah.
You bring Benjamin Franklin with you, and he's going to focus on the technology
Science,
and the science of everything. You bring George Washington with you, and he is going to be amazed at, like, the governmental structure and look what we built. Like, we built this
No,
thing.
he's going to
This
be
is what we
amazed by
thought.
aircraft carriers.
The USS George Washington.
Washington was, before a politician, he was a military guy.
Yeah.
He's going to be like, so let me get this straight.
But before he was a military guy, he was for the vast majority of his life, he was just a farmer. So maybe he's going to be really interested in
But he's military.
farming
But
technology.
his military brilliance is what we know him historically for the most.
Yeah, sure, but he
But they
was.
could be like,
I
so
think
let
he
me
was
get this
a
straight.
reluctant
You
general,
have
though.
you have
Yeah.
a ship that launches flying machines that can rain fire on your enemies, and you still have war,
And it's named after me.
and you still have war.
Yeah,
And tell me more about
wait.
dentistry.
yeah. I still maintain that he would be more interested in something like. I think it would be something surprising to us. Like, he would
Probably.
be amazed by a grocery store.
Yeah.
Like, you can walk in here and there's just food everywhere and it's grown somewhere else, but how does it get here? Oh, it comes on a train? How does what? So wait, you have oranges in
They had
Maine in the
stores.
winter? How does that work? No, but like, they had stores, but it was always it's the little things that would blow him away, that it is
Yeah.
now February and you can go buy an orange. What? Because, like, how would you get an orange from Florida to Virginia in the 1790s?
We have things that go really fast now.
I know.
End of explanation. It would be like if you go 200 years in the future and you have like apples from Venus, you'd be like, okay, well, I guess you figured out a really fast way to get from Venus to here.
You know what I would, because there's one tiny little parallel that is kind of like this today, and that is there's this amazing video on YouTube. I forget who puts it out, but I want to say it's a very well produced video, and it is people that have escaped North Korea. Some of them recently. North Koreans try American barbecue.
Oh God, that is so condescending.
No, it's not, because when you watch them, they have no concept of what barbecue is. And so what they do is they give them the barbecue because they barely know what meat is. Like, they don't eat that much meat in North Korea, especially. And these are not people of the privileged class that live in Pyongyang. These are like people that lived out in the countryside. These are people that literally
District 12.
No, these are people that would, like, maybe they got to eat meat once a year. You know, so like when you they would give them the barbecue and they would try the meat just by itself first and be like, smoked pit barbecue, and they were like, oh man, this is really, really good. And they're like, now try it with the sauces. And just, they gave them sauces from different regions, and 12 Bones was one of the sauces they gave them, which I thought was really cool.
Of course it was. That's so cool.
And they're like, oh, like, this is too sweet, or this, I don't like mustard. Mustard is not popular in North Korea. And like, oh, but I really like this one that's kind of tangy. And it was amazing that, like, North Koreans know what's going on. Like, no, first of all, because we are having all this tension with North Korea right now, do not think that North Koreans are stupid. They are not stupid. They know what's going on in the world. They find out. They get South Korean movies. They watch There are South Koreans that have seen the entire run of Lost. Like, right. Or North Koreans, rather.
I get what you're saying. I think the disparity between between our points of view on this is that I totally get what you're talking about with the barbecue. They have never had it before, and it's wondrous for that reason. They understand the concept of barbecue.
Sure.
And I think people from the 1700s would be blown away by our technology, and they wouldn't understand it initially in terms of how it worked.
Right.
But they understand the concept of technology. They know that we had really crappy horses, and because again, we compress. I bet if you looked at a horse-drawn coach from 1700 and a horse-drawn coach from 1500, they're dramatically different. Like, to us, they would look exactly the same. To people of that time, they are dramatically
but that
different.
would be a styling thing. There wasn't a lot
not
of
a
technology difference between 15 and
From our
17.
perspective, no, but I don't know a whole lot about that.
From their perspective, either.
I mean, I think like maybe
Just
there's
based on
better
the growth of
suspension,
humanity.
but I mean, they both are basically wood boxes with wheels on them. I mean, there's not a lot to them.
Yeah.
Pulled by a horse. But that's 200 years
Well,
of technology.
No, but hold on.
And-
But look at a car 100 years ago versus a car now. The technology, I mean, they're conceptually the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who had a car would see cars now and they'd go, wow, cars have come a long way, right?
Yes.
Okay. Somebody from before that would say, oh, so now it's a car, but it's run by a machine instead of a horse. Got it.
They didn't have, but you forget that this is prior to the Industrial Revolution. Machines weren't really a thing. But they didn't even have the cotton gin.
Yeah.
So it's a huge leap in technology, but somebody prior to that leap of technology would still understand what technology was.
I don't think that they would, especially, okay, somebody like George Washington would, but if you think about the
I don't think
type,
George Washington would.
I think he would just because he was a giant nerd. I think he was a giant nerd.
Yeah.
But
Definitely Ben Franklin would.
Definitely Ben Franklin. But what I'm saying is like the type of technological advancements.
Ben Franklin would have
that
hated
were,
The Last Jedi. He would have been one of those guys that's like, look,
No, but
this is
I
not
think
my hashtag, not my
Where
Star
are
Wars.
the chicks?
yeah, the average person, their advancement of technology would have been like the plow or like flying buttresses when they go to church. They're like,
Yeah.
our buildings are suddenly bigger than they used to be because of this one architectural thing that we
People
have.
always presume that the future is going to be we talked about this on the show before. It's been a while, but people always assume the future is going to be an extension of current trends. That's why when we see people laugh at those postcards from 1900 that say the world in the year 2000 and everybody's flying around in top hats and really, 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 really cool airships.
Right. Okay.
Because they assumed, oh, we have airships now, so airships are going to just get better.
But I think that's different in the fact that you're predicting something incorrectly versus not understanding it. Like,
Well, it's just that we don't
Let- let-
anticipate things will change. We anticipate technological advancement means that current trends will continue.
okay. Let's take it this way. 200.
Which is why Back to the Future happened the way it did, where they went,
Right.
okay, so 2015 is going to be like the 80s, just more.
Right. Okay. So, but let's look at 200 years in our past, which would have been 1818. You're still before the Industrial Revolution. It's on the horizon, but it's still prior. They have no foundational knowledge for almost all of our technology. However, Dr. Alcubierre from Mexico City has theorized that warp travel could be possible by folding space in front of and behind a spaceship. So knowing that, like he is coming up with a concept that we probably will not have for another couple of 100 years, if at all.
Right.
But you could go from this point in 200 years in the future and see faster than light travel and go, oh man, you got, like you were saying, oh, you guys perfected that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I have a concept of how you're doing it. Whereas what's the technological pinnacle of what we've done right now? Like the most high tech thing you think is probably the internet, is the fact that you can transmit massive amounts of data instantly across the world. Mind blown. No concept whatsoever from 1818 of
Agreed.
about how you could do that.
Yeah. And I think that's why your analogy of like the postcards that like, oh, look forward to the future. This is what the year 2000 looks like. I think that actually shows why this would be so bewildering because they don't have a concept of what that can look like.
But-
it's changed so much.
But neither do we.
I'm not saying that we do.
Because I would say, I would hypothesize if you took somebody from, because I get what you're saying, if you took somebody from 1970 and told them what a cell phone was, they would have a lot of the same concepts. I'm talking about a smartphone. I'm talking now a cell phone, flip phone, no problem. It's a phone, works with satellites, got it. It doesn't
work with satellites, but okay.
It doesn't have a cord. I understand.
Yeah.
It's a phone. It works from anywhere, no problem. Now you tell them. Okay, cell phone towers. Fine. which work by satellite.
No, they don't. Fiber optics.
Fiber optics. All right. But
God, where are you from? Like 1985 here?
but what somebody from 1970 would have a hard time conceptualizing, what me from 1985 would have a hard time conceptualizing, aside from the fact that I was just 4 years old, was, okay, so social media or the internet or so anything you want to listen to or watch comes to that device. How? Because yes, you can explain the concept of a telephone, but telephones didn't have that kind of functionality.
I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to explain it really quickly with this. 1818, 200 years ago, would have absolutely no concept of what the internet is or even communicating via telephone. If you hop ahead 40 short years to the development of the telegraph, you now have a foundation on which to explain to someone what the internet is. Because the telegraph is a digital means of communication. It's not ones and zeros, it's dashes and dots, but it's still digital. It's very slow. So if I want to send a sentence, it might take me 4 minutes to send the sentence. But I get it. Right. I can send information across a long distance. And then once you've got that, now you can understand that the internet is just a evolution of that. It's a drastic evolution of it, but it's an evolution of that. But like 18 person would look at a telegraph and be like, that is magical. Like that you can transmit data, like you can transmit a thought and an idea instantly.
But
because it is instant.
But you could do that with smoke signals.
But
not like a sentence.
But that's still line of sight. Now they did have what are called visual telegraphs in Europe set up, where they would have semaphores that would be on mountaintops, and you could signal from mountaintop to mountaintop, and you could convey an idea faster than someone could ride a horse,
like the beacons of Gondor, for example.
Right, but you take that concept and then you explain to them, no, now we're using electricity, and literally I can send a message from Asheville, North Carolina to New York City instantly. And they're like, "Whoa, what? Like that's a week-long horse ride, you know?" And but I can say, "Hey, Mildred, our new baby was born down here in Asheville, and we want you to come next summer and visit." Like that's instantly now in New York City. I mean, that's 40 years difference.
Agreed. Yeah, guys, this has been awesome. Let's do introductions and then close it out.
Now, my brain break is. It's literally we never got there.
We never got there.
This was the cold open.
Yeah. You know, for behind the scenes, what was so funny is we showed up and we're like, damn, we haven't really, all of us have been so busy, we haven't put together a show yet. And I told Ken, I'm like, don't worry, never a problem.
No, he said, don't worry, I'm just going to ask this one question and that's going to be it. And this will go on. It's like the astronauts and cavemen got in a fight.
So true.
Thing. And you just go on and on. But yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily, I see the internet being such a dramatic evolution from that. I get what you're saying. That's a foundation. And then you can mentally advance that to, okay, at some point it won't just be words. It'll be music and it'll be pictures and it'll be pornography, and it'll be all of this stuff that we have on the internet.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I could take a telegraph operator from 1860 and I could explain the internet to him in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And he would get it.
I think what would be even more impressive than that would be the ability to generate the content the way we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the access to content would be impressive. I think the fact that, okay, so anybody now can have a TV show would be would still be pretty like, wow, you have like one device and it can...
Someone from 1940 would be like, whoa, really? Like you guys are like doing a radio show and like hundreds of people are going to listen to you and you're like doing it from your apartment?
Of course, the extension to that would probably be that once you took somebody from like 1960 or 1970 and caught them up on what social media is, how this technology works and all of that, the most astonishing thing is probably going to be, so anyone can point a camera at themselves and put it on this device, and the rest of the world will watch it. One question. why would anybody be interested in that? And we would not have a very good answer.
I don't know. I mean, if you think about, like, everyone has a thing. Everyone has their interest. So mine's like airplanes, and Carly's is like metaphysical stuff, like healing.
Well, it's not that. That's a good point.
Yours is sex.
It's not that different from. Well, yeah, of course. we all have our talents. But you're talking. It's not that different from like ham radio. Ham radio was like social media before social media.
No, I would explain social media as the community bulletin board at your grocery store. Just expanded
just like
1,000-fold.
But
a lot of it is kind of ham radio. Like, I'm going to go on here, I'm going to talk to strangers.
Yeah.
And because we're all ham radio enthusiasts, we're going to marvel in our technological ability to just listen to what other people have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me bring it back one more time to your thought experiment, Matt, because this has been awesome. I'm picturing...
Thanks, I totally had it planned out.
I'm picturing like you, Matt, riding in the car or floating hovercraft or whatever 1,000 years in the future. Matt is totally going to be geeking out over the technological stuff. Ken gets in that same hovercraft and he's looking at the social aspect and the cultural aspect. You guys just showed the answer to that question that we were saying, like, what would they be more interested in?
Technology just makes everyone more of who they already are.
No, I'm saying you would notice the cultural stuff and you would notice more the technological stuff.
So we would need a couple of people along for the ride.
Exactly.
You know? You would need to really enjoy it. You would need to bring along George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin.
It really is turning into like a Bill and Ted kind of thing, where you just have this like phone booth full of historical figures.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? I'm going to close out the episode with one of my favorite scenes from Doctor Who. And as soon as I said that, all of you know the scene I'm talking about, where they bring Van Gogh into the future to see his impact on society. It's the one that makes everybody cry. I don't care who you are.
Every damn time.
It is an amazing, and if you've never seen that, it's with the Matt Smith Doctor, and I don't know which season it is, but it's Matt Smith and Amy Pond is still there.
Yeah.
So it's like the Modern Five. It was like 2011, I think, is when
something like that.
Yeah.
Well,
it's great.
I'm Ken. I'm at Multiverse AVL, and you can tweet me. If you're gonna at me, come at me.
Come at me, bro.
Come at me.
Just don't taste me.
I'm Carly. You can find me at Essentially Well on Instagram.
Cool. I'm at Mincy. I am Matt, and I am at NCMattJ on Twitter and at NCMattJ828 on Instagram.
Talk to us on our Facebook. Like the show, write a review, and as we
FSS
come up to
Podcast.
At FSS Podcast, and add us at FSS Podcast on Twitter, and we'll.
And you can find Gertie at #GertieGangsta with an A on Instagram. Indeed,
on Instagram.
Yeah,
she's something.
She is kind of a gangsta.
We're gonna talk to you next week, and Matt's gonna have another conversation starter that'll take up a 50 minutes of airtime. But so I guess we'll all reconvene at that point. I'm Ken.
I'm Carly,
and I'm Matt.
Till then,
bye.